And I introduce our next speaker. I'm pleased to introduce you to Luke Hilgemann. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Americans for Prosperity Foundation and manages the daily operations of the organization, including oversight of culture, personnel, finance, strategy. Luke is a Wisconsin native and previously served as a Wisconsin State Director for Americans for Prosperity and was instrumental in protecting Governor Scott Walker's sweeping budget reforms that have delivered over $2 billion in savings to the taxpayers of Wisconsin. Prior to work at AFP, Luke worked in the Wisconsin legislators for over a decade, and most recently as the Chief of Staff for the Majority Leader in the State Assembly. He now lives in Northern Virginia with his wife and 3 children. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Luke Hilgemann.
Good afternoon, freedom fighters. How are we doing today? It is a privilege and an honor to come here to New Hampshire to speak to you folks. As you heard in my introduction, I'm from the great state of Wisconsin. And we know a thing or two about freedom there, thanks to the great leadership of our Governor, Scott Walker. But I think the story that doesn't get told enough about Wisconsin and so many states across the country are about people like you sitting in this room right here today. People who are out there every day making a difference for freedom, knocking on doors, making phone calls, educating your fellow citizens about why the principles and policies that we believe in are the right ones for this country. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. As we go on here in 2014 and beyond, I think what started with a few folks in a room at Americans for Prosperity has now grown into one of the biggest grassroots organizations in America. We have over 2.3 million activists all across the country who are fighting for economic freedom. And it's amazing to see what they can do when we are united in that cause. So please, help me welcome to the stage a true champion of economic freedom, the great senator from the state of Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There comes a time in the history of nations when a country passes the point of no return. That time approaches. That time is near. But the question remains, will you be sunshine patriots? Will you shrink at the first sign of privation, or will you stand? Will you stand like men and women of courage and fight for your freedom? The question is, will you? Will you fight for your freedom? Those who would trade your liberty for security, they're inside the gates. They've breached the walls. They're here. The question is, will you stand? I, for one, have had enough. I, for one, will not waver in my defense of freedom. I will not wilt in the face of adversity. I will stand and fight them at every point. Now, some say, we just need to dilute our message, okay? Let's just be a little more like the Democrats. Anybody think that's a good idea? Hogwash! It's exactly the wrong thing to do. Our problem isn't that we are too bold. Our problem is that we are too timid. You go to Washington, and what passes for bold is, oh, we're for revenue-neutral tax reform. I frankly don't care. If that's what you're for, I'll go back to Bowling Green, Kentucky and be an eye surgeon, but I want nothing to do with the timidity of revenue-neutral tax reform. I want nothing to do with budgets that never balance. I don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat. I want nothing to do with budgets that never balance. Now, some say, well, we can defend the Second Amendment, but let's just ignore that Fourth Amendment. Or let's defend the Second Amendment, but that First Amendment, that's not for conservatives. Hogwash, the whole Bill of Rights, that's what we're here for. And some will say, we don't have enough money for welfare or for entitlements, but we've got plenty of money to bail out and give corporate welfare. Hogwash. We shouldn't be sending one penny to rich companies. We send $20 billion a year in direct subsidies to companies. Corporate welfare should once and for all be ended. The top 100 companies in our country average $200 million apiece. And you've got Republicans in Washington saying, oh, the Ex-Im Bank, we've got to be for that. Rich companies don't need your money. And it's an insult to those among us that we say we don't have enough money for these other programs, but we've got enough money for our rich friends. If you want to be consistent, if you want to grow the movement, we cannot be the party of fat cats, rich people, and Wall Street. Now, some will say you can have religious freedom and the Obamacare mandates. They're mutually inconsistent. They cannot work together. Now, some say, oh, well, you know, just give up on your faith and you can stay in business. Or give up on your business to stay true to your faith. That should not be a question. That should not be something that American business has to answer. We should not force people to buy things they don't want and go against their religious morals. Some would say that you can have freedom and yet have indefinite detention of American citizens. That you can have freedom and not have the right to the trial by jury by everyone. Remember what MLK wrote? Martin Luther King wrote from the jail in Birmingham. He said, an unjust law is a law that a majority makes binding on a minority but does not make binding on themselves. The very definition of an unjust law is detaining an American citizen without a trial. I had this debate with one of the other senators, happens to be a Republican senator, and I said, my goodness, you're going to take an American citizen and send them to Guantanamo Bay without a trial? And they said, yeah, if they're dangerous. And I said, sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? The Department of Justice had a memo and said, these are people who might be terrorists. Multiple guns in the household. I would ask for a raise of hands, but I'm not sure people might be embarrassed who don't raise their hands. Weatherized ammunition. Likes to pay in cash. Here's my favorite. Has changed the color of their hair. Stains on the clothing, missing fingers. These are characteristics of the people they're looking for. In Missouri, when it got to the Fusion Center, which is supposed to fuse all this information to stop terrorism, they also included the Constitution Party. People who were pro-life. People who think that we should have security at the border. All of these people were included as suspicious. And it's like, for goodness sakes, I at least want my lawyer before they send me. Some people think, or some people say, you can have justice and put our young people in jail for decades upon decades upon decades for nonviolent crime. Now, some of you may not have thought about this, but it's important to think about. I met a woman yesterday, and she told me, my son was 18 years old. He was in a bad place. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He may have made a mistake. He always wanted to be in the military. But he got caught, and there were some kids in the car that had marijuana, and he got arrested, and he got a conviction. And the punishments are out of this world. There was a young man, Weldon Angelos, was given 55 years in prison for marijuana sale. Now, I'm not condoning marijuana or the selling of marijuana, but 55 years in prison? You can kill somebody in Kentucky and be out in 12. But here's my point, is that if you want our movement to grow, if you want our movement to add new people, if we want to win, the people and the powers that be say dilute your message. That's how you win. Just become Democrat light. What I say to them is, no, we need to be more bold with our message, but parts of our message has to reach out to people who we haven't been hitting, who haven't been listening. The door's not going to open up to the African American community or the Hispanic community until we have something to offer. If you look at the war on drugs, 3 out of 4 people in prison are black or brown. But your kids and grandkids aren't perfect either. The police don't come to your neighborhoods. You get a better lawyer. These are some injustices. We have been people who have been concerned about injustice. We've got to be concerned about people who may not be part of our group here, may not be here today, if we want to grow our message, if we want to grow our movement. And besides, we are the party of justice. We shouldn't let the Democrats and the liberals say, oh, they care about people. We need to be that party of justice. The unemployed. Anybody here ever been unemployed? Anybody here ever had a tough time? Anybody ever had their salary reduced? There are members of our movement who have all suffered, who have all had those problems. But we have to show concern for people who are out of work. 20 million people are out of work or underemployed. We have to have concern for those people. We have to have ideas. They will not be the same ideas that the president has. But guess what? The president's ideas are not working. 20 million people are out of work. Black unemployment is still twice white unemployment. 3.7 million women have been added to the rolls of poverty. Sounds like if someone's got a war on women, maybe it's their side. If we want to grow our movement, it's got to have new people. We can't be the party of the plutocrats and the rich people. I got involved with the Tea Party movement because I thought the bank bailouts were a horrible idea. That I was a middle-class guy working, I didn't feel like sending my money to a guy who made $100 million a year working on Wall Street, ran his bank or her bank into the ground, and somehow me in middle America, in what they call flyover America, I'm supposed to just send my money in to bail out these bankers? That was part of why the Tea Party started, was they were frustrated with Republicans. Many times we've given up on the Democrats, but we were frustrated with Republicans voting for this bank bailout. That's the kind of message. There's always more of a working class, a bigger working class than an owner's class. I'm not against the owner's class, but I want to tell the workers of America that we're on their side. The president keeps offering you free stuff, but you're still in poverty. You're not getting any better. More unemployment insurance. Frankly, I think they'd rather have a job. When is the last time in our country we created millions of jobs? It was under Ronald Reagan. What did Ronald Reagan do? Did he come forward and say, oh, let's just cut taxes for low-income people? No, he said forthrightly, let's cut everyone's taxes. He did dramatically. The top rate, that's what rich people pay. The top rate was 70%. He lowered it to 50%. Then he lowered it again to 28%, and 20 million jobs were created. More revenue came in fact. When you cut rates, people work harder. They make more money. More revenue comes in. But we have to get beyond. We can't let the Democrats say, oh, well, you lower the taxes for rich people. You're just for rich people. Anybody in here ever worked for a poor person? We are all interconnected, and we got to get beyond all this class warfare. But we can't let them beat us up on it, because we need to point back and say, how many people have your policies gotten out of poverty? None. How many people have their policies employed? None. We're in a terrible recession. We're still barely growing, if growing at all. You get free stuff, but you never get out of poverty. Your prices rise because big government steals the value of your dollar. So all of a sudden you got a little bit more and you get more benefits, but your groceries cost more and your gas costs more and you can't go on vacation. All of this occurs from big government. $17 trillion worth of debt is dragging us down. Many economists say that we're losing 1 million jobs a year because of the burden of this debt. We are on a precipice. I said in the beginning, the time approaches. I don't know when it's coming, but the time approaches. Does anybody remember 2008? I remember seeing patients in my office and coming through and looking at my retirement account and saying, oh my goodness, sell, sell, sell. And then I remember looking at my money market account. My definition of panic is when you're worried about your money market account losing its value. I am still worried that the fundamentals of that exist. Our movement has never been about the plutocrats. Our movement has never been about special privilege. But the other side paints it as that. Our job as we move forward is to let the media know we are the middle class. The President wants to help the middle class. Why isn't he helping us? The President is simply loading more people in the wagon. These are not bad people in the wagon. They're people who are out of work and they're suffering. But the debate needs to be not about who cares more. The debate needs to be about what policy will help people more. The policy of the President to say, New Hampshire, send me your money, I'll give you some back later, doesn't work. The problem with the policy is if I come to New Hampshire and I take your money and then I bring it back and I say, Mr. Smith, here's $100,000. Go create jobs for people. 9 times out of 10, I'll pick the wrong person because the marketplace chooses who can create businesses. There's a difference between reducing taxes to stimulate the economy and handpicking people. Think Solyndra. The President says he's for the middle class, but he took $500 million from the middle class and he gave it to one of the richest people in our country. That doesn't sound like it's good for the middle class. The President says a lot of things, but he doesn't ever quite get around to doing them. Right now, anybody got a cell phone? You're under surveillance, all right? The President, he says he's not listening, he's just looking at the phone records, okay? They're not listening to the phone calls, but even that's not exactly true. They occasionally are. But here's the thing. It's none of their damn business what you do on your cell phone. If we want to grow our movement bigger, that message resonates with young people. I took that message to the Conservative Political Action Committee, and I took it to Berkeley. Young kids on the right and young kids on the left, this message resonates. It's not that young people don't like our message of low taxes and less regulation and balanced budgets. They just don't have any money. They have debt, and they're trying to get a job that doesn't pay very well. So you have to talk to people about things they're concerned with. So instead of listening to the poobahs that supposedly are in charge of the party that want to dilute the message, we keep our core message. We're more bold with that message, but then we branch out and take other parts of the Bill of Rights that we all support and take it to people where they are. If we do, we will be the dominant party again. We've got to do it with a smile. We've got to do it with optimism. There's a painter by the name of Robert Henry, and he wrote, "Paint like a man coming over the hill singing." And I love the image of that. We need to proclaim our message with the passion of Patrick Henry, like a man coming over the hill singing, with optimism, and make sure that it's a message for all, no matter what walk of life you are. But when we once again proclaim our message like a man coming over the hill singing, we'll be the dominant party again. Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our next speaker.